All right. Another week, another fight podcast. As usual, it's your boy Mehran. I'm here with the illustrious Dave.
What's going on, everybody?
What a week it has been, man. Or I guess 2 weeks now, right?
Yeah, yeah, man, it's a lot of fights, a lot of everything, a lot of news, a lot of
A lot of
crazy
life, a lot of life.
turnarounds. Yeah,
Yeah. The combat sports world has been moving at the speed of light recently, right? It's just fight after fight, announcements after announcements, things after things happening. I don't even know where to start, but I kind of want to start with the UFC heavyweight battle, right? I
hmm
think that's a good way to start this crazy 2 weeks because it's such major implications and it caused such a domino effect for so many other things. So Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic, what a fight, man!
by far the best of the three.
Like, oh yeah, for sure. Definitely the best of the three. And it was such a it was such a display of like skill at the heavyweight division too, right? Like normally when you think of heavyweights, you don't think of like high level skilled people, but this was a complete opposite. It was a skills fest, right? It
Right,
was like people, using their hands in the most skillful way possible, their takedown defense, everything was strategic, everything was technical. There wasn't any of like the typical of what people think typically of heavyweights, where it's like, hey, these are just two big guys just swinging around.
for sure. These are, some people say the two best heavyweights of all time, and they showed why people think that in this fight. It was back and forth. It was very close. They both hurt each other multiple times throughout the fight. It was some brilliant kickboxing, not a lot of wrestling, which was surprising. But, you know, at the end of it, Stipe came out on top, which I thought was fair.
This is
You
the
know,
right decision, I think.
yeah,
I think I had that fight 3-2.
me
I think
too.
most people had that fight
I
three
thought
two.
4-1 was a little much. It's not out of the scope of reality, but
It's
I
kind
didn't
of
think it was
it kind of exposes one of the weaknesses of scoring, right? Because there could be very, very, very close rounds which Stipe edge out, and you could end up with a fight that's 4-1, but that doesn't tell you how close the fight really was. You know what I'm
hmm
saying? Because
right.
you can say, oh, he won the fight 4-1. That means he dominated his fight. Well, no, it's the fact that those rounds were won by literally like a hair's breadth. Like
Right.
it's the rounds themselves are so close. So it's
I
kind of
think
like,
that like 3-2-4-1 round was the first round.
mm-hmm,
And that was a pretty much a back and forth round where there was one takedown from Daniel Cormier that I think kind of like swayed it, or at least in my eyes, swayed it to him.
yeah.
But I also thought that in that first round, Stipe landed a lot of crisp combinations.
He
So
landed more significant shots in round
yeah.
one.
But
Yeah.
judging,
But that's kind of I guess what my point, right? Is when we go back and we like think about these fights and we say, oh, he won 4-1. What does 4-1 really mean? You know what I'm saying? 4-1
hmm
doesn't necessarily mean that he won convincingly or handily. It just means he edged out each round in
right,
this case. But yeah, I had it 3-2, and yeah, like you did too. It creates such a interesting dynamic, right? With now Daniel is retiring, and I think to take a second and talk about Daniel Cormier, like I totally understand people saying him being like one of the top three, definitely UFC fighters of all time, right? Because how many double champs are there? How many
hmm
double champs who are also Olympic wrestlers who also were able to beat the best of the best at their division, except for Jon Jones, and continue forward, right? I don't think there's anyone else that can say that.
right.
There's very few people in the
And
world. So
to be a double champ at light heavyweight and heavyweight is a crazy feat. I know Randy Couture did. He wasn't a double champ, but he won the belt in both divisions. But
yeah,
those are divisions where there's very little room for error.
right. And there's a lot of turnover as a result of that little room for error, right? Like Stipe is the longest reigning heavyweight champion I think ever in the UFC. Like
Yeah,
Fedor outside of it, but like in the UFC, I think Stipe is, and like with the 5 defenses or something. And so like it's it's really intense that you have such stakes in a fight like this, right?
mhm,
It adds so much to what's on the line here, because this really was a legacy defining fight for both of them. Like both of them have amazing legacies, like obviously, but it has high stakes because if Daniel wins, if DC won and he retired on top, you could argue it for him being GOAT status in terms of the heavyweight division. And you know what? I would still give him, like I said, to me, in the UFC, he's a top 3 MMA fighter of all time, which I think is good enough as like any GOAT status for a particular division.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of unfair when it comes to like the legacy definingness of this fight, because it's like Daniel Cormier is an incredible fighter, but I feel like him not beating Stipe twice is going to reflect more harshly, like in the court of public opinion, more harshly on his legacy than I think is fair, especially when people are gonna weigh it on his like fights against Jon Jones too. So it's like, oh, the best person in his division he lost to twice in both divisions.
I think that's fair, but the fact that he did beat Stipe once, I think helps a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like where it's against Jon, where it's like he clearly lost every single time they fought. Like,
Right.
results of like, picograms aside.
It leaves it open for like people who are stupid but also haters who are just
Gotcha.
like, oh, he knocked him out. It was fluke. He couldn't do it again. And I'm like,
Wild.
that's such a terrible way. Cause I saw it after the fight. People were saying that.
Really?
And it's just like, it's just not fair, because it's like, you really have to look at how good this man actually is. Not even like going back to like Strike Force, or even going back to the fact, look at it's kind of like the story of his career. Like even in collegiate wrestling, he lost to Chael Sanderson. Was his only losses?
Yeah, he only lost to the best.
Yeah, so it's like he only loses to the best, but he beats everybody else.
The fact that he was 4th in the Olympics still boggles my mind. I think being 4th in the Olympics is literally like probably one of the worst feelings in the world, because you're one of the top 5 people in the world at something, in the Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're top 5 in the Olympics, you're top 5 in the world, but you're just outside of that, oh, here's a medal thing.
Didn't he get 4th twice, I believe?
I think so.
Because he was a 2-time Olympian. I'm not sure whether...
I know he got 4th at least once.
Yeah, he got 4th in 2008 for sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what he did in 2004, but that's irrelevant. He's an incredible athlete, even beyond the scope of mixed martial arts. Just like his athletic prowess in multiple sports is just out of this world. I just hope that like people really grow to respect that and not just look at like resumes, because I think for you and I and most people with a brain in mixed martial arts and combat sports fandom understand who Daniel Cormier is. It's the people who are casuals who I think that's what's gonna fall to the wayside, like about how good he actually is.
It's interesting though, right? Because it does speak to how good the people that beat him are too, as well, right? Mm-hmm. Because Jon Jones and Stipe are clearly the best at their respective divisions. Period. Full stop. There's no one I can say that's better than Stipe, because there's no one who's done it as long and who's beaten Daniel Cormier twice. And the same thing with Jon Jones. There's no one who's better at light heavyweight, because there's no one who's done it as long and has beaten Daniel Cormier twice. No one else in the world has done that.
And even with Jon Jones, no one has ever beaten Daniel Cormier like that, ever.
Ever, yeah. No one has ever made him cry. That it was and like that's not a. Listen, man, I'm not taking a shot at Daniel Cormier for crying. Like, I've getting kicked in the face really hurts. So, that's not a shot at all at him. It's more so like to be able to do that to a man who's that tough, who's that powerful, who is that good of a fighter means something, right?
Right.
And now we might get Jon Jones versus Stipe, right? We might get like the ultimate matchup of like the big guys.
Yeah. So I guess we got to lead into that. So probably the biggest combat sports news maybe of the year, actually. Jon Jones vacated his light heavyweight belt that he has held in some capacity for the greater part of the last 10 years or
something
so,
like
9, 10 years.
I think 5, but yes, I think so.
5, look, this last reign, but like over the course of the last decade, he is
over the course of the last decade
for most of the time.
Exactly. Yes, other than Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, and he's never lost it.
Yep.
So he's vacated his belt and is moving up to heavyweight, and presumably he's either going to fight Stipe next, which is unlikely, or he's going to fight the winner of Stipe versus Francis Ngannou.
Which, what a fight, man. So my assumption is that Stipe is going to beat Ngannou again, which is a big assumption. But I think 6 out of 10 times Stipe will beat Ngannou, right? And that's why I feel confident in talking about the idea of like Stipe versus Jones and what kind of matchup that'll be. But I guess before we gloss over Stipe versus Ngannou, what do you think is going to happen in that matchup first?
Stipe versus Ngannou.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like, if people don't know, I'm also one of the last few open big Deontay Wilder fans in combat sports, and I feel like Francis Ngannou is like the Deontay Wilder of mixed
MMA,
martial arts.
for sure, yeah.
And it's just like, it's hard, no matter what you say about their skill level, it's so hard to count them out ever. Because you're like, okay, it doesn't, you've seen it happen. You've seen it happen. You've seen it against a variety of skill levels. It's just like, if he hits you, you're going to sleep. And it's very few people, Stipe is probably the only one who has like not been hit or not gone to sleep.
He got hit and he didn't go to sleep.
He got hit hard.
Yeah, he's the only one that I've ever seen take an Ngannou right. Like, he took the Ngannou shot and kept going, which speaks to how good Stipe is. Now, I remember talking about this on text, and you're basically like, well, now Stipe's older. He's been through a couple more fights. Does his chin go, faster? And I don't know. That's a possibility, right? It's a very distinct possibility. Like I was saying, I think it's a 6 out of 10 chance that Stipe wins, because if the Stipe that fought Daniel Cormier shows up to fight Ngannou, if it's that same kind of Stipe who's that sharp and that technical, like, so to go back to the Cormier Stipe fight, he was so smart in terms of the way he fought him, right? Even in the way he was clinching him in the hand that he was holding to ensure that he didn't get hit off the break. Like, all that stuff, if he brings that same kind of mentality to game plan against Ngannou, and if Ngannou goes in like he did against Rosenstruck, where he just like ran at him and knocked him out, then Stipe is going to win. But if Ngannou comes in with a plan and he sticks to that plan, then it's going to be, then I think it's that 60-40 thing,
I think it's hard to tell, because the one thing you would have liked to see from Francis is, his takedown defense. Because that was his bane in the first Stipe fight.
Yes.
He could not defend the takedowns. And once he was on the ground, the round was basically over. There were a few times where he exploded out of being in the bottom, but other than that, like, if Stipe got him on the ground, he wasn't going anywhere, which is crazy, because Francis Ngannou is a humongous human being.
But if you think about it, Stipe is one of the few people who's big enough and strong enough to keep a person like Ngannou down. Right. Stipe is not small. Like, he is Ngannou's like roughly the same size. Right. Like, Ngannou's bigger, but like, it's not leagues of difference in terms of the size.
Yeah.
And so that's, to your point, it's like, if you get Ngannou down and he doesn't have his escapes down and he doesn't have his sweeps down, he's not going to get Stipe off of him. He's not going to muscle him off every time. He might get away with it once or twice, but unless he starts using some good jiu-jitsu to get out from the bottom, to set some attacks up from the bottom, and he gets taken down, he doesn't have a chance.
Right. And, he didn't really have a lot of – so after he lost to Stipe and after he lost to Derek Lewis, he beat Curtis Blades, which is kind of weird. Kind of a weird TKO, but fair enough. He beat Cain Velasquez. So those are probably the two that would have tested his takedown defense, but he also knocked him out. So
yeah, but to say, and the Cain fight was interesting, right? Because the Cain fight, we saw they were trading until he hit Cain with that uppercut. Like, that was a good fight. And then against Rosenstruck, it was literally like he just ran at him, which I thought was like ridiculous.
Right.
It was great to watch. Like, I enjoyed it so much. But I was like, wow, you just ran at a striker who's that like powerful and just knocked him out. That's wild.
Right. And he in between that, he also obliterated JDS too. So, it's not.
I completely forgot about that.
It's not like there was a lot of opportunity for us to see how good his takedown defense was. I assume Blades and Velasquez were supposed to be those, but
the tests, yeah. I'm surprised Cain even fought him, but yeah.
I think a lot of what that looks like depends on, what the world looks like when this fight happens. Are we still in quarantine? Because then that limits the amount of places that it's going to be. I think that if it's at the UFC Apex, Ngannou might have a little bit more of a chance just because there is less, he can close the distance. I feel like with a smaller cage, it's easier to close distance.
But I feel like it lends itself to being easier to get taken down
Right,
because
but
it's
yeah, it does. But it's also like, those explosive movements are a little more explosive when you don't have that extra, 5 feet of
extra 5 feet to
prone to
back up
like
on. Yeah.
get out of the Ngannou bomb.
But I also think it lets Stipe push him up against the cage, take him down, take some time, like do some
Right.
clench work.
Yeah, it's
Like
interesting.
I think the cage size presents interesting opportunities for both of them, right? I think if it's at Apex, I don't know. It gets very difficult because you're right. It's easier for Ngannou to hit you, but it's also easier for Stipe to duck under and just take a single
Right.
leg.
It's not necessarily easier for Ngannou to hit you. It's easier for Ngannou to hit you the way that Ngannou hits you. Those explosive,
Like his jumping
swinging,
Superman
I
punch. Yeah,
clear 10 feet in 2 seconds
yeah.
explosions.
His Superman punch. No, for
Yeah.
sure. His Superman punch and his reverse Superman punch. Those things are like those distance closing things will be easier. For sure. That's a good point. But let's assume, because for now it's only an assumption. Let's assume that Stipe beats him. Stipe Jon Jones is like an amazing fight to think about, right?
Because they're kind of the same.
They're
Kind
very
of.
similar in terms of like the way we've seen them approach things. Jon Jones probably quote unquote has a higher fight IQ. Like I'm not gonna argue that. Like Jon Jones might have the highest fight IQ of anyone.
And he's more of a kickboxer.
Yeah,
And
he
Steve is more of a boxer who kicks.
Yeah, exactly. I will say they both have very good takedowns and very good takedown defense. Both their striking is crisp. Yeah, you're right. Stipe does rely more on boxing. I don't think Jon Jones would box with Stipe. I think Jon Jones would kick him, oblique kick him, side kick him, try to stay away, and then occasionally try to mix it up with an elbow or a knee, but for the most part, keep his distance, right? Because the only time we've ever seen Jon Jones pushed, as Jon Jones has pointed out recently, is against Gus. And the only time that happened is when Gus took it to him in the kickboxing world. Like just took it to him, like threw everything at the sink at him in that fight. And I think Stipe can do the same thing on the boxing side, but I don't know if he can do it on the kickboxing side.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting because I feel like, wow, Jon Jones is probably he uses his wrestling more in the MMA sense. They're probably on par in terms of like their backgrounds in wrestling. It's probably even. But I don't know. It's a really interesting fight to call at heavyweight.
I think it'd be also another technical fight because both
Yeah,
of
I
them
don't
would
think
come
it'll
in
be
very
fan
smart.
friendly.
Yeah,
Like
both of them
casual
would
fan
fight smart.
friendly.
For sure. It would definitely be very smartly fought between the two of them, and that I think would be very entertaining for us for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Jon Jones versus Ngannou, which is the other way this could go. Now that's something to think about. I don't know what happens there.
Yeah, I could see, Ngannou, the one thing Ngannou has is that he doesn't stop.
He does not. It does not.
He
Jon
doesn't,
Jones' little kicks won't matter. Like
yeah.
unless he
So
knocks him out, it's not gonna matter.
it'll be interesting to see how that works because on one hand, I kind of see it being something similar to how Adesanya fought Romero, except for Ngannou is not going to just pose and wait. So I assume it's going to be a lot
Jones not
of
gonna run like
yeah.
Izzy did either.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to sit and trade with them either. But I think it's going to be a lot of distance distance control from Jones, trying to keep Francis out of that, nuke range.
Out of the danger zone. He's gonna try to stay out of the danger zone.
And then when he closes the distance, I could see some single legs. Because I
but
think that's probably his best bet, because I feel like Francis is very hard for anybody to double leg because he's so
he not
humongous.
doubling in Francis Ngannou. Are
Yeah.
you crazy?
So he's got to, when he comes in recklessly, he's got to get one of the legs and get him on a single leg and get him off balance.
Can't
And then,
imagine anyone blast doubling Ngannou. Like unless Jordan Burroughs, gains 100 pounds, I don't see that happening.
Prime Kane probably could have, maybe.
Probably. Prime Kane could do anything.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's harder for me to be like Jon Jones is going to clearly win that fight.
That's the thing. That's what makes it so interesting at heavyweight. It's never Jon Jones is going to clearly win because both Stipe and Ngannou can put Jones to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like both of them can put him to sleep, right? That's not to say Jon Jones can't do the same thing right back to him, but I will say at 205, it's been a long time since Jon Jones has fought someone who can just put him to sleep, who can just be like, you know what, you're going to sleep immediately. I don't think Dominic Reyes is putting Jon Jones to sleep.
Say, if ever.
Yeah, but I say who? Daniel Cormier is the only person I could think who has like knockout power. I mean, I guess Gus as well, right? But even then, like Gus is more of a technical striker, right? He comes from a kickboxing background.
He was supposed to fight Rumble.
Oh yeah, speaking of which.
Yeah, and then Rampage too, but Rampage was past his prime.
Yeah.
But yeah, he hasn't fought a power puncher.
Lyoto.
Santos.
But to say, where does Santos fit into all this? So now in the light heavyweight thing, moving down there because we're talking about light heavyweights. Now Ian Blachowicz and Dom Reyes are going to fight for the title, and I hope Santos gets the first title shot after that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I think the only logical thing that could happen there.
I think Dominic Reyes should win that fight pretty easily.
We'll see. I think so too. I think Santos could beat Dominic Reyes though, because Santos made Jon Jones look bad in a way that Reyes didn't. Until Santos messed up, Jon Jones kicked him and he messed up his leg. So really, it's Jon Jones beat him. Obviously, I don't want to take anything away from Jon Jones, but until Santos, got his leg messed up in that fight, he was doing really well. So
even
I think
after
Santos,
he was doing really well, but I think Jon Jones fought a specific way. He was like point fighting.
Yeah, but I think Reyes wins and then Santos beats Reyes, and then Santos is the new light heavyweight championship until, who's coming back, right?
Rumble?
Yeah, until Rumble somehow clears out everybody.
Imagine the bloodbath that Thiago Santos versus Anthony Rumble Johnson fight would be.
That would be so great. I don't know how Rumble's going to make 205. He's so big.
He's slimmed down a lot. I don't know if you've seen a recent picture of him. He's slimmed down. He looks like where I would assume he was when he was cutting to 205.
I wonder if he's still like vegetarian or something. He's like went like plant-based for a little bit. I don't know. But,
who knows? But yeah, he's slimmed down. Like when we first talked about this offline, he's slimmed down a ton since that.
But yeah, it's good to see Rumble back. I hope he's rested and healthy, and I hope he doesn't take it too far. But
light heavyweight's interesting now.
Very much so, right?
Glover is coming off a big win too
over Smith, right?
Yeah,
and then Smith will come back eventually, in theory.
Yeah, and then we got the dark horse, Yuri Prochazka.
Oh yeah, that's true. 205 gets so interesting with Jon Jones at heavyweight, and with Jon Jones at heavyweight is so interesting. I mean, heavyweight was interesting anyways, but now it's just like, what's going to happen with Ngannou? What's going to happen with Jones? What's going to happen with there's so many moving pieces now.
I think it clears up a lot at heavyweight because when we were talking about it before, we were like, who
fights him?
If we were like, if the odd, like by chance, were both Stipe and Cormier retired, yeah. It's like, if you do 1 versus 2, it's like Francis Ngannou's already beat Curtis Blades twice.
I will say, if he beats Ngannou and then beats Jones, Stipe should definitely retire.
Yeah.
Like, he might go out as GOAT if he does that.
I would even say maybe if he beats Francis. Like,
well, no.
We want to see him fight Jon Jones, but I feel like, I don't know, man. I'm thinking about from my perspective. If I fought Francis, if my last 5 fights were Francis Ngannou, 3 Cormier fights, and then Francis Ngannou again, and I somehow won 4 out of 5 of those fights. Yeah. 2 of those wins were against Francis Ngannou. I'm like, I'm good.
But think about it, man. Like, if he beats Jones and Ngannou, if his fights to leave the UFC are Ngannou, Jones, and DC,
I think you have a strong argument that he's the greatest MMA fighter of all time.
easily, because it's just like, what are you gonna say? He fought the best of the best and the killers at every single possible turn. But yeah, and that would definitely make him the baddest man on the planet. Like, I don't want to hear like nothing about nobody. If you do that, and you're the heavyweight UFC champion, you're the baddest man on the planet for sure. Because that's a crazy resume.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much movement. So in the, I guess we're just going down weight classes here. We brought it up earlier, the Izzy Romero fight. Izzy Costa is coming up. What do you think about that?
I don't. It's kind of similar to how I feel about Francis Ngannou versus anybody. Basically, it's like, first of all, before we even get into that, Paulo Costa needs to be drug tested once a week.
No, he has to be drug tested after the fight because I want to see this fight happen.
I don't. Him out of fight camp is like.
How does he make 185 is the question. Does he stop eating for 2 weeks on end? Like, I don't understand.
I don't
Like,
know. I don't know
does he
what
do a
he
mini
does,
Ramadan or
but
something? This is
it's
crazy.
it's not legal. Whatever he does, it's not legal. I don't care what he says. He can give me clean drug tests for the rest of his life, and I won't believe him
Yeah, there's
because
not a
he is
chance in hell.
huge. He cuts down from 225, and he's not even like. So, side note, but is relevant. I watched the video of this guy basically trying. He's an expert on like TRT and like bodybuilding and stuff, and he was going through Yoel Romero's career and basically trying to determine whether he, in his semi-professional opinion, thinks that he is juicing, basically.
Thinks he's juiced or not, sure.
And he was showing pictures of Yoel Romero outside of fight camp, and he is ripped, but there's like
There's some
fat
love
there.
handles. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks better than most guys his size, like most average guys his size, and probably most athletic guys his size. But
Yeah.
it looks realistically muscular out of fight camp. Paulo Costa does not look realistically muscular outside.
Paulo Costa always looks what we call stage ready, right? He always looks ready to go on stage for a bodybuilding show, which is ridiculous because it's impossible to be stage ready year round, which is why everyone's like, "Hey, you're cheating." But who knows, man?
So,
who knows?
Aside from all that, I think Izzy wins that fight.
So I think this is. Go ahead.
I think technically he's just on another level than Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa has a very short reach for his height, and I just feel like if Izzy can avoid the bomb, which I think he can, he will just pick him apart from the outside the whole time. But also depends on the ring size and where it's going to be. They haven't announced the location just yet. So
the thing is, like, are you of the opinion that Romero beat Costa? Because I'm of the opinion that Romero beat Costa.
I thought it was too close to call.
I think it was a close fight that Romero won, but I'm not mad that Costa won it either, right? And I think that the fight between Costa and Izzy in this case is going to be very interesting because I think Izzy's going to fight it smart. I think he's going to point fight it. I don't think Costa's going to stand in the middle like Romero at all because he sees that doesn't work. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be close but not exciting, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Like it's not going to be this bloodbath that we've been promised, but it's going to be a good fight because Costa does throw a lot of bombs, but he is also constantly moving forward. He's not a counter striker. He's not waiting for you to throw the bomb. He's throwing bombs at you. He's not waiting for you to come in and then return with the bomb.
Right.
So what's going to happen is because he saw there's no way to beat Izzy by waiting for him. Is he's going to move forward and Izzy's going to have to avoid a lot and he's going to have to be evasive and he's going to have to counter strike carefully. So he's not going to be able to, quote unquote, I don't think he's going to knock Costa out either. So I think it's going to be like 3 to 4 rounds, before someone gets a clean hit on the other person. But it's going to be a lot of action and a lot of movement.
Right. I think there's going to be a lot of leg work from Izzy.
Mm-hmm. A lot of leg work for
to
sure.
sort of mitigate that, come forward style.
I do wonder how close to his bicep
I
injury.
could see Izzy knocking him out late.
Maybe late, but I do wonder how Costa is going to function off of this bicep injury, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what he's coming back from. Is
Is it
this
his power
bicep?
arm or is it his
I
lead
don't
arm?
remember which arm it is, but I know he has a bicep injury, right? And he's coming off of that. And even if it's his lead arm, it's gonna cause some issues, I imagine. He looks good on the pads though,
Yeah.
so who
Constantly.
knows?
Yeah, I also think, where it's gonna be plays a huge part in it too. Because, if it's at Abu Dhabi, which that's like the rumor that it's gonna be there. I
Mm-hmm.
think that plays into Izzy's favor a lot more than if it's
He
at
has more room to dance around. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Um,
I think Izzy wins on points,
yeah, me too.
but I think it's a close fight. I think it's a good fight. But yeah, man. So that's the upper half of things. Like what a crazy time for the UFC, man. They have a great product that they're putting out right now. I'll
Yeah.
put it that way.
You want to talk about Sean O'Malley?
Yeah, so now let's move into the lower weight classes. A lot of movement, a lot of interesting things happen. Let's start with Sean. So Sean O'Malley gets kicked by Cheeto Vera. His nerve goes to sleep. And when his nerve goes to sleep, his foot goes to sleep. This is what's been reported by everyone else, guys. We're not saying this is truth because we don't actually know what happened because no one's explicitly said this is what happened, but this is what's been assumed by most people. And his foot goes to sleep pretty much because it's dead and nerved. And when the nerve is dead, Cheeto Vera, basically Sean O'Malley falls down. Cheeto Vera gets on top of him, does some vicious ground and pound, and that's the fight. Sean O'Malley is upset, thinks that Cheeto Vera is going to be a journeyman, thinks that he's going to be a champ, and is, understandably disappointed. I think that this is just the fight game, and that's what happened. And that Cheeto Vera is really good. And if that kick really did dead his nerve, man, that sucks. You better learn to check some kicks, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what
I
else to
thought it
say.
was. I thought it was the other way around. I thought Cheeto checked his kick, and that's what.
Oh, it was that. Oh, okay, maybe that's what it
Yeah,
was.
I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah, that's the
People.
thing.
I think Cheeto has to bank on that because he has to, you know,
This
assume
is
that
him.
he did something to
Yeah, to
win.
make him win. Yeah,
And that's why he's like claiming, "Oh, I knocked him out with the elbow," and blah blah blah. I think it don't really matter. I think they should run it back. I don't know if they will run it back, but it just sucks. It sucks for Sean O'Malley. I just kind of, one of the things I hate about combat sports and combat sports fandom is that like people just hate people for no reason. Like I don't think that Sean O'Malley has given anyone like a clear reason to hate him.
he hasn't done anything bad, and he's.
Yeah.
What is he supposed to say? Oh yeah, that guy beat me up. Like,
It's not even that. People were like happy that like the hype train was derailed. I'm like, who cares?
yeah,
Like it wasn't even that like it wasn't even that serious to me where I would like if I wanted that to happen, like I would be happy about it. Like he got
people
injured,
rooting on
people
other
get
people's
injured all the
downfall.
time,
Yeah.
whatever. You know, and like I
Hmm.
was called a casual for saying that, at the moment that happened, it wasn't clear that Cheeto did anything for that to happen. It looked kind of random. And like people called me a casual, like, oh, you go cry about it, hype trains. I was like, I don't even care about him being hyped up. I was just pointing out the fact that, at that moment there wasn't a clear indication that anything outside of like a freak accident happened. Because people were like, oh, it was his knee. It was like no one knew.
People were like his ankle. Yeah, we didn't know. And I think, listen, man, Sean O'Malley's a really good fighter. He's gonna be back, and he's gonna be back, and he's gonna win, and he's gonna do really well. And I think this is a small bump, right, in his road to success.
I think for this to happen this early is good for him though. And even down to the way that it happened, I think is probably the best for his like confidence as a fighter, as the kind of fighter that he is.
That's true. That's true.
Like if he had gotten starts, I would be a little bit more concerned about it. But
It's funny
and,
because
he's confident. He's talking shit like he always does. But that's good to see. I think
fight.
for him, that's for him to still be the same way that he was before the fight, I think is a sign of good things, at least from his end.
Right. It's funny because the fight that we got from last night, Edgar Munoz, is the fight that we expected from Sean O'Malley Chito Vera.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect, like, continuing on in the sort of the lighter weight classes here, I did not expect a 38-year-old Frankie Edgar to be that amazing and that sharp and to get that, cool of a striking display from the two of them.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, we expected that kind of war from Chito Vera and Sean O'Malley that we got from Edgar Munoz last night, which I think was pretty cool to see. And I was really hype about that entire card. I want to take a second here. Earlier in the prelims on that card, I want to shout out my man's Matt Semi the Jedi Semmelsberger on his UFC debut and win. He's from 88, which is the gym that I train at, out in Maryland. And just the entire card last night was full of like very, very good fights. And I think I'm very proud of his debut. That was a small interlude. But yeah, back to I guess the lower weight classes. So now we have, Frankie Edgar at bantamweight winning. We have Chito Vera here who's won. We have who else fought recently, right? Cody Garbrandt fought recently and won. There's a lot of movement at the lower weight classes as well.
Yeah, Sterling and Sandhagen.
And Sterling and Sandhagen, we're waiting on that.
Yeah, so
I don't know where this all puts everyone.
Dana said last night that it's more than likely going to be Jan and Sterling for the belt. For Jan's belt, I guess I should say that.
That's right. That's how it should be for sure.
And then I said on the previous podcast that they were talking about Marlon and Corey, which I think is a really good fight too.
Yes.
I hope it's a main event because I think that Corey can beat Marlon over 5.
I would say so. I think so. I don't know if he can beat Marlon over 3. I think Marlon could, kind of pressure him there.
Also, shout out to your former teammate for getting the biggest upset since Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, Dobson did really well, and she's been killing stuff in Colorado in elevation, and she okay. So it was a good fight too because that fight, the girl came out super aggressive and was trying to like bombard her and like just like knock her out in the first round. Very cool, calm, collected, took her down, kept her on the ground, did the right things. That was super dope to watch.
Yeah, shout out to her. I don't know what her contract is like, but she also got the 50,000 performance of the night bonus. So I'm sure that's a blessing.
She from DC too.
Yeah, I already know. We're homers over here.
Yeah, always.
I can't think. There was something I had to think about, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, not important.
Should we talk about some boxing then? Because there's been a lot of boxing movement too.
Yeah, a lot. It was a lot of boxing. So we can go back to the same night of Stipe DC3. We had the return of David Benavidez. He unfortunately missed weight, so he was unable to defend his belt. And if he had lost, it would have became vacant. But he did not lose. He very unimpressive, in my opinion.
He won. He won, but he's nothing to write home about. It's like, all right,
you see the typical David Benavidez stuff. Yes, he comes forward. He throws great combinations. I will have nothing bad to say about his combination function. He's probably one of the best combination punchers in the game. But, it looked like the same David Benavidez we're always used to seeing. His footwork is very so-so. And, the guy that was there, after he realized he couldn't walk him down, it was basically over from there. He took a lot of punishment, and then the ref stopped it. Or the corner stopped it. But, whatever. The big news out of that actually is, since the belt is now vacant, the WBC ordered Canelo Alvarez to fight Avani Yildirim.
Yeah, Yildirim or something. I can't pronounce it.
I can't never pronounce his name right, but to fight for the vacant belt, which is basically Canelo is now the WBC super middleweight champion of the world, because Yildirim has a 1% chance of beating Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah. It'll be
If
good to
that
see.
might even that 1% might be generous because he got absolutely destroyed by Chris Eubank Jr. and Chris Eubank Jr. is not a tenth of the fighter that Canelo Alvarez is. So
It'll be good to see Canelo fight again, but it's kind of a waste of time. I want to see him fight someone good.
yeah, but I mean he's kind of we can talk about that later too. But he's in an odd place right now. DAZN wants him. What are we talking about now? DAZN wants him to fight, but DAZN wants him to take half of his purse to fight.
Yeah, the zone's like going broke, right? Trying to
I
pay
mean,
him.
I don't know if they're broke, but they are not.
They ain't doing well.
Yeah, people don't. When I think a lot of their financial troubles came from the pandemic and people not renewing their subscriptions or canceling their subscriptions because there was no boxing for like 3 months.
And they're kind of having the same problem the NBA is having too, where ratings are down all across the board. Anyways,
Yeah,
right? So,
and boxing and MMA because they also have Bellator is a very niche
niche
sport
sport.
to begin with. So they don't get a lot of you don't get a lot of casual viewers signing up to the zone.
And the fact that the Bellator is also on that Paramount network and the prelims are on YouTube, like they are spread out, right? The business model of DAZN does not seem to be working.
It was not pandemic proof, that's for sure.
That is for sure. I think under normal circumstances it would be doing okay, right? Because generally I feel like Canelo is almost enough. So if I don't know, if I'm Canelo, I do understand him fighting like nobody's because like I'm getting paid half of what I should be getting paid.
But I
Why
don't
am I
even
going
think
to
he's
take
going
the
to
risk?
take that. He
Oh,
doesn't
so
have to take that.
So they're
Yeah,
counting on him to be a company man.
yeah, which is not going to happen. So yeah, but that's probably like the biggest boxing news is that Canelo has been ordered for a title fight at 168 for a real belt this time. Um,
We
moving
talk about
on. So
Dylan
like,
White losing.
oh, don't get me started. So yesterday, Matchroom had their like back. I don't know what it's actually called, but I'm gonna call it backyard brawls. That's where it is. It's in Eddie Hearn's backyard. Um,
Is that
Dylan
legit?
White. Yeah, no, I'm so serious.
I was watching it. I was like, this is kind of weird, but okay, yeah, I got you.
Um, Dylan White fought Alexander Povetkin for the WBC interim title, which is basically he fought him for a shot at the winner of Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury's rematch, presumed rematch. And this will probably be the only good thing I say about Dillian White. He looked very good yesterday.
Yeah, he knocked the other guy down a couple times. He was,
Yeah, he was in shape. The last time we saw him, he was extremely overweight. He did, and he just wasn't up for that fight at all. And he looked really good. The first 2 rounds were pretty close, and then the third and the fourth round, I thought he turned it up a lot, knocked him down twice, and I thought it was going to be over. But then the fifth round, a beautiful slip from Alexander Povetkin got under a lazy right hook from Dillian White, and then that signature Sasha uppercut put him out cold. That's all you wrote.
Yeah, what a thing, man. What a
I'm
thing.
not. I've laid into Dillian White enough already on social media, so I'm not going to do it too much. But
I
my
will say
thing,
this: it makes things a little interesting.
my thing about Dillian White is that he had the opportunity to fight for this belt a long time ago. He turned down multiple mandatory position fights. He turned down one against Dominic Brazil on the first Wilder Fury undercard. Then he turned down a fight against Luis Ortiz to get another mandatory shot, which is what Luis Ortiz got in the rematch in last November. He turned both of those fights down. He fought Derek Chisora again. He fought a bunch of guys he was supposed to beat and claiming that he was the boogeyman of the division and that everybody was running scared of him. So, I feel like, this was kind of his downfall. He tried to play it. Even this was kind of a cherry pick. Povetkin didn't look that great in his last fight. And, he's 41 years old. He's been fighting for a long time. And, this is supposed to be his show out. He came ready to fight and got put to sleep. So, honestly, I hope we don't hear from him again. But, we are. But
I
it
do
is what
think
it is.
it doesn't like the winner of this fight also doesn't matter, right? Because if Fury, assuming Fury beats Deontay Wilder, which I think is a pretty safe assumption at this point,
Yeah.
He's gonna fight Joshua next, isn't he?
Yes, and then presumably, well, Joshua has his mandatory with the IBF, and then presumably, if they both come out of that, they're going to fight each other, and then Povetkin would get the shot at
Winner of
that
that.
winner, even though they have a rematch clause for an interim belt, which is fucking weird. So they're going to fight again, but whatever. I don't know, boxing, right?
Boxing heavyweights are not. I will say one thing: the UFC heavyweight game is much better than the boxing heavyweight game, in my opinion, right now, because you just have those,
sure.
and it's just like, I don't know. I heard Ruiz was fighting recently or something, right?
Yeah, he's fighting. What's his name? I don't remember. He just fought Chris Arreola.
Yeah, it might not matter.
Which is fun. No, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be a fun fight.
If Ruiz comes for real.
Yeah, because they have the same style, except for Chris Arreola does not punch as hard. So it's gonna be a lot of punches thrown, a lot of two Mexican style fighters fighting each other is always fun. So
gotcha.
Anyway.
But yeah, man.
Heavyweight division is not interesting. Not that interesting to me.
Speaking of heavyweights, though, and speaking of the Zone and Bellator, Bader lost. Ryan Bader lost recently.
He did.
Yeah,
that was Friday.
That was Friday, and it makes things even more interesting for Corey. Going in, right?
Yeah.
Because now he's got Fedor's protege.
I think that's a bad matchup for him.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, this is kind of crazy, right? Like, now things are even more interesting on that side, because it's like, we thought Corey was going to walk into like a Bader fight and it's going to be interesting and it's going to be good for him. But now he's fighting literally Fedor's protege. So who knows what happens there in Bellator?
Right.
I don't know. Everything's up in the air.
Yeah. Sean Porter also fought last night in a very... He looked good, but it's like, whatever, bro. Like,
it was Sean Porter. Sean Porter won.
Yeah, he won every round. Well, I thought he lost the first round, but he won basically every round on the judges' scorecards, and it was very uninteresting. It's really... Sean Porter has a very unique style, but he doesn't have the power that I think to make that style look great. And I think that's why he has, aside from beating Danny Garcia at the very top, he has trouble with like the very top of that division because he doesn't have the power to like really hurt these guys.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and there's nothing he can really do about that either, right? It's not like he can all of a sudden get more power out of nowhere.
Yeah, especially at his age.
He's
30. He'll be 33 this year. So another really interesting fight on that undercard. We were talking about Michael Fox being a very large welterweight. PBC has a light middleweight fighter named Sebastian Fundora, who is 6'6".
Whoa.
154. 6'6", 154.
That doesn't sound healthy.
Yeah, he looks like someone who is 6'6" and 154.
That sounds really unhealthy.
And the craziest part about it, he doesn't use his reach like that. He fights on the inside.
That kid,
he has an 80-inch reach and fights on the inside.
Man, that kid's move up a weight class. Like, that's ridiculous.
He's fun to watch though, especially. So he knocked out Nathaniel Gallimore, who's like a gatekeeper at 154. All of the best, most of the best 154 fighters have fought him, and if they beat him, they pretty much go on to like the upper echelons of that division. But it's just so interesting to see him fight because he's humongous for that weight class, and he fights on the inside. He does not use his reach at all. His jab was better last night for sure, but like for the most part, he does not. He fights. He's an end fighter at 6'5". He's 6'6", 80-inch reach.
So pivoting back to the UFC, one thing that we forgot to talk about is Covington versus Woodley is coming up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's going to be good.
I think they both have the tools to beat each other.
They're the same fighter. Covington and Woodley are the same person with just opposite politics. They're the same fighter. Like, Woodley's older at this point, right? And like in his prime had more knockout power, but in terms of like their wrestling base, in terms of like their approach to striking, in terms of their striking level. Like, yes, Woodley can knock you out. Like he has more of a knockout power, but in terms of like the actual level of striking shown by the two, they're not that
You
much
mean
better.
like striking ability?
Yeah, you know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
because I'm
Like,
like their striking style is not the same at all.
yeah, excuse me, not style, but like the level at which they are at that style. So
Yeah,
yes, ability is the right word for it. Like it's not like one's a massively better striker than the other.
right.
You know, they're about the same. Like they're very much the same
I
in a
think
lot of the things they
I
came
think
from.
Covington's striking style is bad for Woodley at this
At
stage
this
of his
juncture
career.
in his career,
Yeah, but
I think. Go
I
ahead.
think I think that Woodley. I mean, I don't know, of course, but I am confident that Woodley is the better wrestler of the two. Um, so
I am confident of that too. Actually, yeah.
I'm interested to see how that looks, especially since Woodley's striking style is very much like counter punch heavy. He likes to counter with that
That
very
overhand, right?
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So it's
this is it
interesting.
for Woodley. If he doesn't win
Yeah.
this fight, he's retiring. Like there's no way he continues if he loses this fight.
I don't. I mean, I think he only took this fight because he doesn't like Covington.
But this is his rival. This is the guy that he hates. This is the guy they've hated each other the longest. Like
Yeah.
this this will happen, you know?
Yeah, and it should have happened 2 or 3 years ago.
It should have. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's
it
no
should
one's
have
fault, but
it should have happened when Woodley was champ, that's for sure.
yeah.
And we were talking about Santos. Santos and Teixeira are fighting actually on
Is that
September
just
12th.
announced?
Yeah, I just pulled this up, like, and UFC tweeted about 2 hours ago.
Okay.
Overeem versus Sakai, Santos versus Teixeira, Covington versus Woodley, and Adesanya versus Costa are the next four main events.
Nice.
So it's good stuff coming up, man. And like, I think overall we got some really interesting things going on here, right? I don't know what happens though. I don't know what happens in a lot of these fights.
Oh, wow. These are right around the corner.
Yeah, like they're
Holy
coming up
shit.
in the next coming weeks. Oh, sorry, I should have said the dates too. Yeah, Overeem versus Sakai is September 5th. That's a UFC fight night. Santos versus Cesaro September 12th. So I think the week after. That's also a fight night. Covington Woodley is September 19th. So the week after that, also a fight night. And the PPV is September 26th, Adesanya versus Costa. So
Oh,
the UFC is like,
I'm locked in. This is fun.
they're just like, yo, here you go, here you go, here you go. Man, there's got to be a way to convince, like, I guess because the money is not there, you can't convince boxers to do this, but
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
it would be a lot of fun.
They don't even want to fight without because they don't. UFC fighters don't even get. Do they get gate money?
I don't think so.
They don't even
That's
get
not.
the gate money. So this is boxers, like the big time boxers, like the main events, and maybe even some of the co-main events, depending on who it is. They get parts of the gate. So like a lot of them don't want to fight right now because they're missing out on a huge chunk of money.
Yeah, so you're only fighting if you really need to.
Yeah, or if you want to.
Or if you really want to in this case.
Yeah. What a lineup though. Holy shit. That's crazy. Wow. I wanted to touch on Top Rank also had a card last night too.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It was
Yeah.
on the app.
So at 175, which is light heavyweight, there's like a WBO like pseudo tournament kind of thing. They have 4 fighters. Elliot Alvarez, Joe Smith Jr., Gilberto Ramirez, and I forget the other guy who's fighting for it. But basically, they're all like Joe Smith and Elliot Alvarez fought last night. Gilberto Ramirez and the other was another Russian guy. They're fighting, and then the winners of those two are going to fight for the vacant WBO belt that Canelo vacated after he fought Kovalev. So last night, I would say it's an upset. Joe Smith Jr. dominated Elliot Alvarez and knocked him out in the 9th round.
Yeah, that was.
Joe Smith Jr. is a very good story behind him. He's from Long Island. He's very much like a lunch pail kind of guy. Very, very involved in his community too. I remember when Hurricane Isaiah hit, him and his father were literally like helping people like with their bare hands. Like, cleaning up the whole area in the neighborhood and helping people out of like houses and stuff like that. So, he's a very much like that, like hardworking kind of fighter. And, his name really comes from, he ended Bernard Hopkins' career, basically. They fought and he
Yeah.
knocked him out the ring. And it was
Yeah, that's when B
very
Hop
sad.
fell
Yeah.
down out the ring and stuff, right? Yeah, I remember that fight. That
But
fight was
he's
crazy.
always been like the guy that like just can't seem to like break through to the top of like that division. He's lost to Dimitri Bivol. He lost, but like he's beaten some good guys too. He beat Jesse Hart, who was like Bernard Hopkins' protege from Philly. So it's good to see him get this opportunity. Like he's fighting for a vacant world title in his next fight, and Elliot Alvarez is not a slouch. He stopped Kovalev to win the belt at first, and even though he lost against Kovalev in the rematch, but still, like he's a very good fighter, and it was really shocking to see him lose like that.
No, for
Joe
sure.
Smith Jr. But
did we talk about the Angulo fight?
Yeah, that was the Benavidez one.
Right? Oh, that's Benavidez one. Yeah, we talked about it. Yeah.
And then on the undercard, one of my favorite fighters, Rob Brandt. He was the former, I guess, like regular WBA middleweight champion. He beat Olympic gold medalist Ryota Murata. Yeah, Ryota Murata, in a fight that he was supposed to lose, and he completely dominated him over 12 rounds, like complete domination. Crazy. He's a volume puncher. He's like the way that I would describe him, he's like a technical Sean Porter.
Mm-hmm.
So like if Sean Porter was a technical boxer, that's the kind of output you see from him. Like very fast hands. He throws a lot of punches, and they hurt too. He defended the belt once before he had a rematch with Murata in Japan, and Murata stopped him in the second round. That was an even crazier fight than the first one. Actually, it was just high volume punching. I'm a little skeptical about that because it's just funny that he fought him in Vegas and he completely dominated him. And Murata did not look the same. Like he was very much like, I don't know whether he wasn't used to punches or whatever, but he just was not the same fighter. And then he went to Japan and all of a sudden he's throwing 80, 90 punches around and it's stopping this guy. So I don't know, but they're gonna have they're supposedly gonna have a rematch at some point in the next year or so.
We don't talk about rumors on this podcast.
Yeah. But the big thing about that is that he changed trainers and now he's in Terrence Crawford's camp.
And okay.
That was, at least from what I saw yesterday, has been a great move from him because, and he was talking about it too, he was saying like, I was throwing high volume punches, throwing like 8-9 punch combinations. And like, I would land my combinations and just start throwing more combinations basically. And that was leaving myself open. And he was like, Bomac, who's Bud's head trainer, they have 3.
Yeah.
He was like, look, you got to be in and out. Land your 3 or 4 punch combination and duck out. And you could see him applying those things there. And, I'm a huge fan of Bud Crawford, obviously, but I'm even bigger fan of his camp because they have a knack for taking guys and making them better, like legitimately better.
And, they always working. They always working too. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're one of the few places where you look at the pad work that they do, it makes sense. It's not like the nonsensical pad work that everyone else is doing.
Right. And they have like a bond between them, not only them and Bud, but like them and all of their fighters.
All their fighters, yeah.
They took probably the biggest name of that besides Bud is probably Jamel Herring. Yep. And when I was watching Jamel Herring before, I did not think super highly of him. He was Olympian. He just didn't look like he was going to be that great of a pro. And they took him in, and he looks completely different now. And that's the mark to me. That's the mark of a good trainer. It's like people will write him off for having Bud because Bud is once in a lifetime kind of fighter. He has unique talents that anybody could have taken Bud and made him into a world champion. But when you can take other guys and make them extremely better, That's the mark of a good trainer to me.
I mean, yeah,
So,
that's what a good coach is, right? Taking someone without talent to being the best.
yeah. Not to say that those guys don't have talent, but they don't have Bud Crawford's talent.
Yeah, okay. Talent is all relative, right?
Yeah.
It's like not taking someone who's a prodigy,
Mhm.
you know.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, I
man,
think that's it on the boxing news. Boxing like fight news.
I think that's probably it on all fronts. We covered a lot this episode.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I think that's it for us. Thanks for listening as always. As usual, we're just two fans talking shit, so don't take anything personally. But feel free to leave comments, feedback, and tweet at us.
Yeah. I'll see y'all next week, man.
Yeah, man. Peace and love.